thinking he would never build again. There they nailed him through his hands and feet. Still he carried out the master plan. Jesus filled a bridge to heaven so that I could have a way up to him. Jesus filled a bridge the only way he could, with only 3 nails and 2 pieces of wood. With a rugged cross, Jesus built the bridge. The potter looked from heaven to a world below, and it seemed there was no way to claim his own. So to the world his son, the master builder, had to go to make a way to bring God's children home. Jesus built a bridge to heaven so that I could have a way up to him. Jesus built a bridge the only way he could, with only 3 nails and 2 pieces of wood. With a rugged cross, Jesus built the bridge. With only 3 nails and 2 pieces of wood. With a rugged cross, Jesus built a bridge.
Amen. Do you have a bigger toolbox than that? Was Jesus' toolbox bigger
I'm
than
sure
that?
his was bigger, but I couldn't carry one.
Dave, you need a toolbox? One of my wife's favorite songs that Jim sings, Jesus Built a Bridge. And you know, Terry, did you get a microphone? If you can read verses, when we do it, 10 to 20, I was going to have everybody read them, but then maybe we can tie them in. I'll try to get everything in today. We're talking about the faith of Abraham, and I did the first one. I said we did these a few years ago, and I started looking, and I did them on Sunday night. And a lot of you don't come on Sunday night. So now you're getting we talk about faith. You know, we've been looking at Abraham, we're looking at his life and what he's doing, and God told him to go. God, by faith, he said, God said, I want you to go to a place that I will show you. But most of us wouldn't go somewhere if somebody didn't tell us the destination. Now, some people just take off and go places, that's fine. And you end up where you end up, and you figure out, well, we're here, let's just do this, and let's do that, and let's do this. Wyatt has been to all, how old is Wyatt, 23? 4? He's getting old too fast. He's been to all 50 states. And at 24 years old, he's been to all 50 states. Jim has been to all of them except Hawaii and Alaska. You haven't been to Alaska either, right? He said if he could, and won't fly, so if he could make a boat with pontoons or something, a truck, he could drive to Hawaii, but they've been to 48 of the states. We've been to quite a few, but not I think 30 or something like that. But Wyatt's been all over the place. Abraham was told, I want you to go. But when you get there, I'll let you know. I don't like that. We like to plan. We like to know at least the direction we're going. So Abraham picked up and he took his family. Someone said that a faith that cannot be tested is a faith that cannot be trusted. Boy, that is true. Now, when we have our journey of faith, when we're traveling on this journey, we would like everything to be, as the song says, a rose garden. We'd like everything to be hunky-dory. Am I right? Mm-hmm. But along comes the devil. Along comes life. Along comes problems. And as we're going to see in the message, along comes our own mind telling us, well, I can do it better. When I was sick, I went to the doctor a week ago Friday, and I'll tell you what Jim said the time he went to the doctor. She looked in my ear and didn't see anything. No, that's not true. This ear was full of wax. Had to get the wax out of my ear and all that. The other one was fine, but this one was full. Had to look and see. So let's read our verses, chapter 12. I know I have on the back of your bulletin verse 10, but if Carrie read 10 to 20, because we're going to touch on those other ones too. Because our faith, we have this faith, but we get in the way. Raise your hand if you've ever gotten in the way of your faith in God. The other ones who didn't raise their hand, we're going to have an altar call. You come back. We get in our own way sometimes. We trip ourselves. Ann has the ability. She tripped over her own shadow one time. She hasn't fallen a long time. She used to fall a lot. But we get in our way. So read our verses, Karen.
And there was a famine in the land, and Abram went down into Egypt to sojourn there, for the famine was grievous in the land. And it came to pass, when he was come near to enter into Egypt, that he said unto Sarai his wife, Behold, now I know that thou art a fair woman to look upon. Therefore it shall come to pass, when the Egyptians shall see thee, that they shall say, This is his wife, and they will kill me, but they will save thee alive. Say, I pray thee, thou art my sister, that it may be well with me for thy sake, and my soul shall live because of thee. And it came to pass that when Abram was come into Egypt, the Egyptians beheld the woman, that she was very fair. The princes also the Pharaoh saw her, and commended her before Pharaoh, and the woman was taken into Pharaoh's house. And he entreated Abram well for her sake. And he had sheep and oxen, and he-asses, and men-servants, and maidservants, and she-asses, and camels. And the Lord plagued Pharaoh and his house with great plagues because of Sarai, Abram's wife. And Pharaoh called Abram, and said, What is it that thou hast done unto me? Why didst thou not tell me that she was thy wife? Why sayest thou, She is my sister? So I might have taken her to me to wife. Now therefore, behold thy wife, take her, and go thy way. And Pharaoh commanded his men concerning him, and they sent him away, and his wife, and all that he had.
So, as you see on the bulletin, if you're a visitor, on the back of your bulletin, you can fill these things in that are on the slides. The first thing is a test of circumstances. We all have circumstances, like I said, we all have things happen to us that we don't like, that we're not prepared for. We get surprises, flat tire, whatever it is, we have surprises and things slow us down. Well, Abraham, God said go. He headed to Egypt. But then he started thinking, they're going to think this and that and this and that. So he said, it's only a little white lie. So when we get there, we'll get to it, just tell them you're my sister. Is there ever a right time? Is there ever a correct time? Is it ever okay to lie? Mm-hmm. Absolutely not. We call it a white lie. Fran, you call it what? Francis, you call it a white lie? We call it a white lie. We tell ourselves, well, it's a little bitty thing, and it's okay, and I can get myself out of some problems if I just tell this little white lie. So Abraham's test was his circumstances. God had called Abraham, like we said, he had called him to a country. I'll tell you where I'm going, where you're going to go. And at least 2 occasions, God has spoken to Abraham, directly to Abraham, to confirm his promises to him. Now, when God speaks directly to you, I've told you when God called me to preach, he spoke to me just like I'm talking to you. I heard God's voice. He said, I want you to preach. I had already said in the youth meeting before that in May, I said, Lord, I'll do whatever you want me to. And then in September, our youth meeting happened to be at our church again in the St. Louis area. The Lord called me to preach, and I went up and I gave my life to the Lord. Whenever he talks to you, whenever he talks to you audibly, whenever he speaks to you, you know it. When your mom spoke to you, how many of your mothers used your middle name when you were in trouble? When I heard Richard Lee, by the way, if you got a friend request from me, it says R. Lee Borden, it's got Aiden on the top of it. Somebody hacked my account on Facebook. That's not me, so don't friend them. I guess it is R. Lee Borden, but somebody hacked that, so do not give friend requests. So now they're in the land of Canaan. They're ready to settle down. As it was back then, there were a lot of these people were nomadic people, and this was common for them. They would travel, from what I learned in Bible customs and cultures, they would have tents, and they would set those tents up. Did you see the one slide? Jim said he liked that one slide. He said, boy, the dad and the son's laying there. If you didn't see it, they're laying there. He said, boy, the stars look pretty. And the son said, what's that mean? He said, Dad said, somebody stole our tent. When you figure out somebody stole your tent if you're in it? Anyway, God showed him and God went. So God allowed a famine in the land. Not only did God allow it, God caused it and allowed it because he wanted to give Abraham some direction. Now, I've said that because there are times when God will allow some circumstances to get a hold of us because it's this thing like we had in school, a TEST. How many of you like tests when you're in school? I told you a while back, we hated it when the professor walked in. Pop quiz! You have no idea what they're going to answer. They're just trying to see if you've been paying attention in class, see if you've been paying attention to any details. Well, you take this pop quiz, and sometimes you do okay, and sometimes you didn't. Well, they're heading towards Egypt. Egypt is, look at this next slide. Egypt is a type of the world. Rather than seeking God in the trial, Abraham tried to, look what you can fill in there, he tried to run away from the problem, and he looked to the world for help. Now, we have to be careful that we don't do that. I don't remember the exact number, but our country spends more money on psychiatrists and psychologists for help than most of the countries around the entire world. Think about that. I mean, it's billions. It's billions. Some psychic, we saw a commercial the other night, some California psychics or whatever it was, said, if we don't help you, it's free. I said, I got somebody that'll help you for free. His name is God. But we spend billions and billions, not us, our country, on looking for somebody to give us a good answer for a problem. They could give you a 50-50 answer, just like the weatherman. If the weatherman said it's going to rain, he's got a 50. We could all be weathermen and women. 50% chance of rain. That means there's a 50% chance it could rain. But there's a 50% chance it might not. We could all get that right almost every day, right? We'd be right on 50%, and we'd be right on 100% of the time, most of the time. But here he is, going to the world, saying, hey, I need some help. We need to make sure that instead of going to the world for help, we go to the world's creator for help. We go to God. I guarantee you, everything's not going to be hunky-dory. Everything's not going to be roses when you wake up. There's not any of us that are like June Cleaver. She would wake up, and she'd stand up, and her pearls were on. Her hair was all neat. Her makeup was perfect, and she'd start her day. She didn't have to scare herself when she looked in the mirror, you know. She was perfect. But the world doesn't happen that way. So God uses the thought, you know, the tough circumstances of life, and sometimes they are, but to build the muscles of our faith. Now, little kids will hold their arm up. My grandkids have all done it. Look at my muscles. The older you get, the muscles don't work as good. The older you get, the muscles hurt a little more than they did. The older you get, they don't move as the same. The older you get, it's harder to get up off the floor. But take that analogy, and when we exercise the muscles of our faith grows. What happens to water when it goes down a hillside and it goes over rocks and under rocks and hits things? What happens to that water as it goes down that hill? It gets purified. There's sediment, there's little rocks, there's little pebbles, there's things in the water, there's dirt. And by the time it gets down to that, when we were out on our 25th anniversary, which has been 22 years ago, went to New York and Vermont, we went down this mountain, and the sign said, no road. They were redoing the road down this mountain, and they took it all up to gravel. There was no road. But down alongside this mountain, I mean, I'm talking probably 6 or 7 miles, was this beautiful, is it a creek or a creek? It was this beautiful body of water. And I would bet you, we didn't stop at the bottom, but I'm almost guaranteed, because I've done it down in Tennessee and other places, you get down there and you get that water in your hand and you take a drink of it, and it's pure and it's clean. It doesn't have the chemicals in it that they put in the water plants, and it tastes wonderful and it's cool. That thing was beautiful. But as this water goes over these ripples and these rocks, we get purified. So, as we're going along in life, God allows circumstances to happen because we need to go over these ripples and these rocks. Because we need to be cleansed sometimes. We need to be purified sometimes. Because we pick up impurities along the way. When I got home yesterday, took my shoes off and I had wood chips all over my socks. Walked in the living room and guess where some of the wood chips ended? Guess you grabbed a little sweeper and swept up the living room before I got in trouble. I usually do that anyway. We got a little thing that's pretty good. But I had wood chips on there. Well, we go through life, things happen. But God has to have it. Has to help us. So stay where where we are until God directs our move. Yogi Berra said, when you come to the fork in the road, he had all kinds of witticisms. He said, when you come to a fork in the road, take it. Well, that's obvious, isn't it? When you come to a fork in the road, somebody had a picture a while back on Facebook. It said, when you come to the fork in the road, take it, and had a fork stuck in the ground, and they were reaching for it to take it. You know, might as well take it all the way, you know the phrase. When you come to the fork in the road, sometimes we'll stand there. Do I go left or do I go right? But what we should say, Lord, do I go left? Or Lord, do I go right? You direct me. Because not only is this fork there are going to be other circumstances. It may be a bigger hill. McCormick's Creek State Park has a big trail. And if you go one way on the trail, because we counted the steps one time. Do you remember when we did that, Mike? 96 steps on that hill. One time we went and we went down the steps. That's the easy part. I mean, I could sit down and roll and you don't want to do that. But another time we took the trail the other way, didn't realize it. Guess what we had to do? 96 steps is a lot of steps after you've been walking a while. Me, Becky, and Joyce went to the Calvary Bridge Festival a week ago Monday, and then we went Tuesday to 2 of them. In those 2 days, we walked 9.5 miles. I lost 3 pounds. We walked 9.5 miles. Joyce went home that first night, and usually she can't sleep. She laid down up to 9 o'clock. She slept all night. We were tired. We went to Mansfield and Rockville that second day. We was wore out. We were tired. So, stay where God tells you to go. Look at this next slide. There's going to be times, in times of testing, we're going to be tested. Now listen to this. Our question should not be, how can I get out of this? But what's it say? what can I do? What can I get out of this? Because I believe when God allows circumstances for us, it's for a purpose. When Ryan was little, he would make something, and you wouldn't know what it was, and he said, it's for purpose. That was one of his phrases. It's for purpose. I guarantee you, today, tomorrow, next week, things are going to be a little bumpy, because that's life. God's going to allow the bumps there. You go down these roads now, there's several speed roads in Bloomington now that have speed bumps. They want you to slow down because people have gone through the neighborhoods too fast. How many have been on the new Fullerton Pike extension? How many of you have driven on that? A couple of the neighbors, the people who live there, have been complaining. They said people have been driving 90 miles an hour. They've been asking the police to come and patrol it. It's a nice stretch. You go around the roundabout by Bachelor, and then you can see the hill all the way up to the top of the hill where 69 is. And it makes it nice for us. We come out of our street, turn right, you just have to go down, go over Tap Road, stop at the lights. In the evening when Tap Road was full, be backed up from Rogers all the way to Rockport. You have to sit there and sit there. Now we just go straight to go to 69. We just go straight over, come out of our house, we go straight over. You got to go around 2 roundabouts. No, matter of fact, on the highway you got to go around 3 roundabouts. If you're going north, you got to do 4 roundabouts if you go south. But anyway, it's a straight shot. It makes it nice. It's an easy road. Well, all the roads aren't going to be easy. It's not going to be simple. So look at this next thing. We had the test of circumstances. Then we have the test of people. Do people get in our way sometimes? Yes. So in Egypt, Abraham faced a whole new set of problems. Look at that next slide there. When we run from one problem, it won't be long. What does it say? It's not going to be long until we're faced with what? Another one. You get through this problem, boy, I got it fixed. And then something else comes up. And you got to work on it. Now, if we believe, I have been saved a couple of years. We used to have a training hour at church. In the church I saved at in St. Louis at 6:30 on Sunday night. We had church at 7:30. We had 4 service of basic church, Sunday school training hour, and then with the whole training hour, and then church. And I remember training hour one time. The man's in heaven now. We had a big discussion about whether God allows things to happen, whether he puts us in those circumstances for a purpose. I mean, we spent 2 or 3 weeks on this. And I had been saved but a couple of years. I hadn't been saved long. So a lot of this was new to me. And we talked about what God does and how he allows it. And whether he allows it for a reason, whether it's just circumstances. I believe God puts us in circumstances for a reason. In Cain, all Abraham had to do, in Canaan, all he had to do with his family, which was there was a famine. But in Egypt, there was a Pharaoh that he had to deal with, which made it a lot different than the famine. Yes, famine's hard. Well, yes, you could, if you wait a little bit, you could grow your own food. There are things like that, maybe ways. But now you're dealing with this guy who's in charge of everything. He's in charge of the whole country. He's the one that's in charge, so they're dealing with him. So Abraham, as you know, as we read, Abraham changed a number of ways. You know, he changed, look at this next one. He moved from trusting to scheming. From trusting to scheming. That's what happens when our mind gets in the way. We start doing this thing and we start saying, you know, I can do it myself. I can figure out a way that I don't need God. I can do it myself. There are things that we can't do ourselves. Now, there's physical things sometimes that we have to do and have somebody to help us. There are mental things sometimes, and sometimes we even have to get advice for that. But our mind starts scheming, saying, well, I can just do it myself. You know, there was no altar at Egypt. That's what Abraham was used to, having an altar to worship God. Abraham did not call upon the Lord for direction. And then look at this next slide. And this will be the last one for this week. He resorted to his own wisdom. That's always going to lead us to trouble. We have this thing we call it a conscience, and there's a phrase that came out, I don't know when, I didn't look it up. Let your conscience be your guide. Your conscience, and especially if the devil gets a hold of it, your conscience is going to guide you in the wrong direction. We use these things called GPSs, and the Bible is God's positioning system. We use these things called GPSs. Most of you have a phone, has a GPS on it. Many of the new cars have GPSs on them. Last year when we went out west, even though we flew out to Borden, Montana, we drove 1,800 miles in 8 days. We drove a lot of miles because we figured if we're going, we saved for 3 years. We figured if we're going, we're going to hit 3 national parks. And we did. We drove a lot, but we had to have this GPS. We had this Ford Fusion that was a nice car, had a big screen, but the GPS kept going off. And we finally figured we were doing it wrong. We had it hooked up to the phone wrong. We had it hooked up to everything wrong. Once we figured that out, it stayed on, but we needed that thing to get us around. Because we had never been there. We had never been in that area. We had never been out. We had been to Wyoming, but we had never been to Montana or Idaho. And we needed that thing to get us everywhere. It says turn left, it says turn right, it says go 1 mile, stop at the stop sign, you know the whole thing if you use the GPS. Well, God will give you those directions too if you'll trust Him. He'll give you the directions. God's positioning system is a lot better than anybody else's. He planned to deceive the Egyptian leader. He planned to deceive him, as you read our story. So he moved from confidence to fear. Now, a lot of you can do a lot of things Frank said her brother couldn't cook before. Some people can't cook. Some people are afraid to cook. It's not that hard once you do it. My first thing that I remember making was when I was in the Cub Scouts. I made it by myself. My mom wasn't there. Kraft, macaroni, and cheese. That's pretty simple. Even back then we liked Kraft, macaroni, and cheese. And then one day I thought, I'm going to, they didn't have the tubs of, for those of you who are a little younger, you haven't been around as long, they didn't have the tubs of frosting. How many of you remember the boxes? You had to dump it out of a box like a cake mix and mix it. So I told my brother, Mom wasn't home from work yet, and I said, let's make a box of frosting and eat it. I was only probably 8. I opened that thing, and I read the directions and did it. And then I looked at the box. It wasn't frosting, it was a cake mix. We ate it anyway. We were poor. We used to have to eat, if we wanted something, sometimes we had ketchup bread, that's all the food we had. We put ketchup on bread and that was our food. We had ketchup bread or we'd open a can of spinach. We wanted to be like, and we did want to be like Popeye, that never worked. But I didn't look at the box, didn't pay attention. We made a box of cake mix. We survived. Now, not knowing whether Mom wanted that cake mix or not, now in our house, it didn't matter whether it was for a meal. If you had something you could eat, you wanted to eat, it didn't matter if it was set aside for a meal, you were allowed to eat it. We could have it if we wanted it. If we had it, we could have it. It didn't matter. That wasn't a big deal. If it was for a meal, Mom would just do something else. So he moved from confidence to fear. Sometimes we have confidence we're doing the right thing. We find out we're doing the wrong thing. But when we are in God's place, we never have to fear. Now, we use the phrase to fear God. But that is not to be afraid of God. That is to reverence God. That is not to sit and say, well, I'm going to twiddle my thumbs and I'm going to see if this thing works out. I'm going to see if this thing works out. This stuff's going on. I had it. I tell Carrie's voice, she still got a little bit of it. And then Connie called last week. She said, I got it in my chest. Dave had it. So this stuff's going around. I don't, so far my wife started coughing yesterday a little bit. So far she hasn't gotten it. Hopefully she does not. She doesn't need that now after her surgery. But this stuff's been going around. We don't like it. So we've been praying for everybody. Get rid of it, Lord. We just need to get rid of this stuff, and we don't want to pass it around. But fear. Now, fear can cause a lot of physical problems. Fear can cause panic. Fear can cause your blood pressure to go up. It can cause your body chemistry to change, just like anger can. But fear can do the same thing. We are not to live every day in fear. We're not to wake up every day and be afraid of what's going to happen. Who's in charge? God is. The Lord is in charge. We're not to wake up and say, oh me, oh my, what's going to happen today? So he took his eyes off of the Lord and he started looking at people. Now that's fine sometimes. We move from bringing blessings to bringing judgment. Verses 14 through 20. God called Abraham to be a blessing to the nation. But if the leader doesn't be a blessing, God's got to do something. Just like our parents. Raise your hand if you ever disobeyed your parents. Troy, why'd you put two hands up?
I got a mother-in-law.
Got a mother-in-law. You're going to behave. We all did. Our parents would say, don't do something, and we'd say, you know what? I can do what I want. They're not here to see me. My mom was always afraid of us climbing the trees because when she was about 7 or 8 years old, she fell out of a tree and broke her arm. So she was always afraid that we would fall out of the tree, but you know what boys do, and Kinsey was the same way. Kinsey's not afraid of doing anything. But we'd climb in a tree. One time, I think I told you, we didn't have a garage in our backyard, but there was a garage that butted up to our backyard. And I called my mom one day and said, Mom, come outside. And when she stepped out the door, I jumped off the garage, which is probably stupid. You know, ankles break even when you're young, 9 years old. She said, if you ever do that again, you won't have to worry about jumping because I'm going to kill you. I never jumped off the garage anymore. I did do other things. I did disobey. I will admit that. We all have disobeyed God. But he moved from bringing blessings to judgment. You know, God called Abraham to be a blessing. He puts people in our lives to be a blessing, but he can also cause judgment. Jonah, what did Jonah do? He ran from God. Lot's family, look at Lot's family, how they did not serve God. So when we disobey God, we bring judgment upon those around us. We have stories of God bringing judgment upon, what does it say, the third and fourth generation. You say, boy, that's awful mean. Boy, some of the judgments I got from my mother, it felt like it was going to the third and fourth generation. I told you I bought those Hot Wheels tracks, and when she used them for a belt, I wish I hadn't bought those Hot Wheels tracks. But she had a belt. The old paddle balls used to be that. The wood now is about so thin you can just take it and snap it. The old ones were thick. And I can vouch for the fact that they hurt on certain parts of your anatomy because I got them there. Paddles, belts. You know, the thing I saw on Facebook a while back said, kids today don't know what it is to hear the sound of a belt being ripped off in 1.2 seconds. Pia, how many of you had your dads do that? Anybody going to admit that? Whoosh! And you knew what was coming. And you knew you were getting a whooping. And you knew it was going to hurt. I told you, Bobby and Ricky one time, what did they do, Loretta? Dale was going to spank him, they put magazines in the back of their pants. Dale had to laugh. He still spanked him, but they put magazines. They thought, we'll fool Dad. We'll put magazines there. Well, Dale was smart enough. He saw them. We disobey God, and others are going to feel the consequences. Sometimes, you know, someone might look at this situation that Abraham was in. You know, he did right. He didn't do right. But, you know, what about the wealth from Pharaoh? But even this thing, you know, God had to judge them. Listen to this before we end. Because of their great wealth, Abraham and Lot could not live together, and they had to be separated. You know, in our situation, our world, there are people who are wealthy. Someone donated $130 million. It wasn't me. So that our troops could get paid. They're not saying who it is. But someone donated $130 million. Now you figure our troops, that's going to get spread out quite a bit. That, you know, I don't know what they make now. I remember when they got $200 or $300 a month. I'm sure it's a lot more than that now. But some kind person, debt generated, donated $130 million for our troops because they cared about our country. Because there are some who keep voting no, we're not going to open up our country. They'll do it eventually. Hagar, the Egyptian maidservant, brought division and sorrow into this situation. So having had a taste of Egypt, now we said that's the world, Lot started measuring everything by what? By what he had seen. You can't always do that because Abraham failed the second test of faith. He said, I can do it myself. Now, children, another thing Ryan said when he was young, when he got old enough to start feeding himself, he said, I do it. You try to feed him, he'd say, I do it. Now, when kids are young, when they're little, they have a mouth, but they don't always hit it. Ryan used the thing that I had when I was a baby. It's called a baby tender. They still make them. We went to a seminar one time. We didn't know that's what it was for. Now, however, they make, mine was all metal and had a seat in it. And we had a preacher friend in St. Louis. The seat had torn. And Brother Coleman, on the side, he restored couches. He redid recliners and couches and that during the week. Pastor a little church in St. Louis, Calvary Cross Missionary Baptist Church. He's in heaven now. And he redid the seat. And it was mine when I was a baby. Ryan used it. Now they make them, they got smart. It's a big square table and a seat in the middle. And now they have this plastic bib that you put over the baby, snap it, and it goes on all four corners and covers the whole thing. Somebody had a baby that was messy. Have you ever seen a baby eat those little I don't know what they call them, those cookies that are made for teething? Those things make a mess. They go everywhere, and the kids have them smeared all over the place. But whoever thought of that, somebody thought, hey, we're going to make this easier on Mom. We're going to have this plastic cover, and it's going to be easy to clean. When our grandkids come, we have a cherry table, years and years ago. When the grandkids come, a plastic cover gets put on it immediately. Because their table, they've ruined it. It has no surface on it. It's bare wood. It's an old table. That's fine. They've done everything from crafts to everything on it. One of these days, Ryan said, when they get older, we'll get a nicer table. But as soon as the grandkids are going to come, Becky gets out the plastic tablecloth. Because they'll set a cup on it or something like that, and then it'll leave a ring. Connie did that to our old oak table that was about the foot of this and ruined it, put a ring on it, never did come off. So Becky just covers it. It protects it. It keeps all the stuff off. We don't have to worry about it then. You know what I thought? When we trust in God, we're taking that plastic of protection and putting it over us. Because God's going to protect us. Now, he put Abraham through some circumstances, and this story's not over. We've got a lot more messages. But our faith, this week, you may go over some bumps. You may hit some bumps in the road. You may hit some of those speed bumps. And now they're not making just speed bumps. They're making these big, long things. I can go over my truck, it doesn't bother, but boy, if you hit a Becky's car too fast, or a little car, you can tell the difference. But we're going to go over some speed bumps. But we have to say, Lord, what are you trying to show me? Not how can I get out of it, but what can I learn from it? Where's my faith? So Heavenly Father, there may be somebody watching by video right now, and they've never asked you to come into their heart. They've never trusted you. We sang the song, Jesus Saves. Someone watching by video may not be able to sing the song, Jesus Saves, because they've never asked him to do that. So if there is someone like that, Lord, we're asking you to touch these lives. If there's someone in this auditorium or in the downstairs, if they have never accepted you as their own personal Savior, may you not allow them to leave this building without coming to one of us and saying, hey, can you show me how to be saved? Lord, we want Abraham left by faith, and we see that he got himself in the way, but we're going to see along the journey that he's still going to trust you, and we want to trust you too, every single day. We want our faith to grow. It doesn't matter whether we're 20, it doesn't matter whether we're 90. We need our faith.